Hi guys, it's Quinn again, and today on the channel we're going to be talking about the book Lovecraft Country. Now, Lovecraft Country was not at all what I was expecting when I heard the name. Now, it wasn't until I looked at the back of the book that I realized at all what it was about, and I'll just read that for you guys now. Chicago, 1954. When his father goes missing, 22-year-old Army veteran Atticus Turner embarks on a road trip to New England to find him, accompanied by his uncle George, publisher of the Safe Negro Travel Guide, and his childhood friend Letitia, on their journey to the manor of Samuel Braithwaite, heir to the estate that owned one of Atticus's ancestors. They encounter both mundane terrors of white America and malevolent spirits that seem straight out of the weird tales George devours. So obviously reading that, I was super intrigued by it. I'm obviously black, I'm obviously a science fiction and fantasy nerd, and I figured this was at least somewhat related to the work of H.P. Lovecraft, but I didn't know exactly how. This book, as I said, really did shock and surprise me. Now, it says in the back of this that the main character of the book is Atticus Turner, but in reality, this book is more like an anthology that involves several different characters that interact with each other, but each chapter is like a monster of the week type weird tales story. I've just always found it really appealing, the idea of going on a different adventure every week or every chapter. It's really, really cool to me. Alright, so let's talk about what this book is actually about. Like I said, the title, Lovecraft Country, implies that it's in some way related to the work of H.P. Lovecraft. Now, I didn't know if eldritch horrors were going to appear, or if like people from Lovecraft's universe were going to pop up, or if it was a retelling of some of Lovecraft's stories. I had no idea what this was going to be. But it turns out that it's only tangentially connected to Lovecraft. And what's actually happening is you're having different people experiencing different kind of paranormal, supernatural, weird things, and they're all encountering different weird things. They've all been put in circumstances where weird things are happening around them, whether it's sorcery, whether it's weird technology that involves like space travel or whatnot. And then, of course, there are some loose Lovecraft tie-ins. So mainly where Lovecraft comes up in this book is from within the universe as a fictionalized author. So this book isn't set inside of Lovecraft's universe. Lovecraft is an author inside of this fictional universe, just like he is in ours. So you have the main character Atticus, who is a big fan of all sorts of fantasy stories, Ray Bradbury, Heinlein, H.P. Lovecraft, just as I am. And what gets interesting is his knowledge of these stories and the ideas in them helps him at other places in the book, and it helps him deal with some of the paranormal stuff that's happening around him and around the other people that this book follows, because it's not just about Atticus. Like I said, it reads more like an anthology with a bunch of different characters. So you would expect that even though this book is only tangentially related to Lovecraft, that there would still be some elements of cosmic horror, or that would be the main focus of it. But actually, no. There's very little cosmic horror in this book. Just a little bit, but not much. The main horror that this book focuses on is racial horror and racial tensions in America. And I must say, I found the characters in this book very relatable. And I was very moved by this book on a very personal level. I related to Atticus immediately when the book opens up and he's alone, driving in the South, in Kentucky, getting pulled over by a cop. You got this cop questioning the books that are in the backseat of his car and going, is this your car? Like, you're reading science fiction and fantasy like this. And so that resonated with me on a real level, because as a black nerd, I'm constantly having the things that I do questioned. It's like, why are you reading this and not this? It's like a constant act of having to reprove who you are to people over and over and over again. And I definitely related to Atticus's struggle tremendously. I feel like I have to share something about me with you guys. Now, I was born in a southern county in Georgia. Most of my life, I was raised by my grandparents. Now, I essentially grew up on stories of Jim Crow. My grandparents told me about having to go in the backs of restaurants and ride on the backs of buses. My granddad has told me incredible stories about racial prejudice and tensions that he's experienced himself. I've experienced these racial tensions, in the 21st century. I've never told this story on YouTube. Told it in other places, but never on YouTube. But I think if there was ever a time for me to tell this story, it would be in this Lovecraft Country review. So, this was my first year of college at Valdosta State University. And I had driven to the comic book shop with some friends. We were playing some Magic the Gathering rounds, quite nerdy affair. Got a little bit late. My friends were still inside the comic shop. It had gotten a little bit dark. I was pretty hungry, hadn't eaten all day. So I walked over to the burger shop or whatever the fast food restaurant was right across the street, came back to the comic book shop, sat on the corner, started eating. About 5 or so minutes into me enjoying my burger, I look over and I see this guy, big guy, white guy, kind of looking at me from across the parking lot, and I think, oh, what's up with this guy? He's kind of staring me down, like what's the deal with that? What's up? And I think maybe I should go say something to him, go wave at him or say hey, what's up, man, or something, because he's kind of creeping me out a little bit, staring at me from a dark parking lot where we're just trying to have trying to eat, minding my own business. And so I'm there and he's there staring me down for about, 5 or so minutes, looking really weird. I'm starting to get a little bit tense. And then my friends come out of the comic book shop, my white friends. And as they're walking out, he walks up to them and strikes up a conversation. And also just as they were walking out, I was finishing my meal. And so I finish up and I walk over to them and I see him kind of look over at me and kind of reach toward his side a little bit, what's going on? And so I walk up and I go, hi, and my friends say hi to me. And then he looks at them and he goes, oh, he's with you guys. I thought I was going to have to use this for a second. And he kind of pulls up his jacket and shows his gun. And so immediately me and my two friends were kind of freaked out. I was just sitting on the sidewalk, sitting on the corner outside a comic book shop eating, not being menacing, 5 minutes from campus, minding my own business. And for some reason to this guy, I looked dangerous enough, suspicious enough for him to think that he might need to shoot me. And he felt the need when I walked over to my friends and we started talking to show us his gun and point out that fact. Well, needless to say, we left immediately, and it was one of the scariest moments of my life. There's a few other stories like that growing up in Georgia, maybe one or two that are a little bit worse, but that's the real experience of mine. And so reading this book and seeing these black nerds have such similar experiences and have such similar thoughts to the ones that I've had in my very mind is kind of just very, very incredible and very, very impressive. Now, Matt Ruff, the author of this book, is a white guy. So definitely he must have interviewed a bunch of black people because these characters seem too real. So many things about it just seem too true. So Lovecraft Country isn't really scary. It's kind of like Pulp Fiction, half serious, fun. There's a lot of adventure. There's ghost. There's witchcraft. There's creepy voodoo dolls. And like I said, it is all wrapped around these ideas of racial tension. And all the stories are in some way rooted in racial ideas because they're told through the lens of black people living in the 1950s. On a side note, reading this book also got me thinking of a movie that I saw when I was a kid called Tales from the Hood, right? And I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but Tales from the Hood was so scary when I was a kid. So in Lovecraft Country, there is one chapter called Horace and the Devil Doll. And there's this creepy voodoo doll that's hunting this kid down and torturing him or whatever. it reminded me tremendously of Tales from the Hood because there is a sequence where you have this plantation house that's being bought by this white politician who's really racist. And at some point, this house was a slave house where all the slaves got killed and eventually got bought by this voodoo lady who supposedly put all the souls of the slaves inside of the dolls. And so, of course, this guy moves in and the dolls don't want him there. And it gets really creepy.
Where the fuck did your little black ass come from?
So definitely the sequence in this book where the doll was very creepy. And also doubly it reminded me of Tales from the Hood because there's also a story about a little boy that draws monsters in the character Horace, and this is a comic book creator. See how many ways I relate? I'm literally a comic book creator. Horace is a comic book creator. I relate to all of these characters on so many levels. And not just Horace and Atticus. Hippolyta I found to be extraordinarily relatable. Her just desire, she just wants to see the stars. She just wants to follow her dreams. And then also the character Ruby, I felt had one of the most interesting arcs. I don't want to spoil it completely, but the metaphor is quite clear. And that's something that a lot of black people think about. I can attest to that. What would it be like to live like that, for a day or for a week? And to go about the world in that way. What would it be like? How would the world see you? How will you see the world? So that was something, when I got to that part of the book, the Ruby chapter, I thought for a second, this might not, let's see what Matt Ruff does with this, right? This is really easy to mess up and to get wrong, especially for a guy that has never lived in black skin. But Matt Ruff, like I said, did his research. Very, very good book. Very respectful. Very real characters. One more interesting thing that I have to talk about with Lovecraft Country is the relationship between the character Atticus and his father, Montrose, when it comes to the books that Atticus chooses to read. Now, early on in the book, there's an interesting section where Atticus is talking about growing up and wanting to read books by white authors. He's Robert Heinlein, Ray Bradbury, Lovecraft, and his father always bringing him some reason why the book was horrible, the book was racist, the book had a horrible depiction of black people or something. And the kid just enjoying stories. I just want to read stories, I just want to read stories. And if I'm being honest, I'm not 100% sure what Ruff was trying to say with that. But for me personally, I think books and stories and movies will always be a product of their time. And that's not saying let's forgive authors for messed up beliefs that they might have had. Not saying that at all. But I'm saying that it is possible to separate the art from the author where we can. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes there are writers whose hatred or bigotry seeps into the writing. Personally, I don't feel like Lovecraft is necessarily one of them. All right, so final words on Lovecraft Country. Now, this book plays on a lot of different kinds of horrors other than racial tensions, but that's obviously wrapped around everything. It also kind of genre hops a little bit. There's some weird sci-fi stuff going on and some weird, more supernatural, ghostly stuff. I'll tell you about one of my personal favorite scenes involving the character Montrose encountering hungry ghost, I should say. And these ghosts aren't hungry for food. They're hungry for feeling. And basically what they want, or what he wants, is for Montrose to tell him a story. He wants to almost feed off of Montrose's pain. And so Montrose basically starts telling him the story about like when things went really bad for his family one night and there was like there was a race riot, violence essentially. There was an attack by white supremacists on his community, essentially. And the curious thing about the scene, I think, is the underlying metaphor. So just check out this quote here. The look of naked craving on Winthorpe's face reawakened that inner voice. Get out, it told Montrose. This ain't a man, it's a vampire, and it's starving. Get away from it. So, essentially what I think is going on here is Matt Ruff is making a metaphor about how often we feed on trauma and making a more specific one about how kind of white people might feed on black trauma. I don't know if that's necessarily what's going on, but I think as a wider whole, we can talk about like how humans like to hear about other people's pain. Like we watch sad movies, we watch documentaries about sad things that happen in the world. We read messed up books about the Holocaust and all sorts of things. So I think what he's talking about is the weird part of us that's entertained by other people's suffering, which is quite dark if you ask me. All right, and I think that's it for Lovecraft Country. Like I said, great book. I'm going to watch the show. I'm going to see if it's anything like the book, and then I'll be reviewing the show probably next week. I can binge the show. I had to get to the book kind of slowly because there was a lot of stuff to absorb. A lot of times I had to pause reading this because it was kind of like over the top, and the ways in which I was relating to it, it was like it felt almost too real, even though I live in 2020 and this is set in 1954. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Quinn's ideas. And check out the Lovecraft playlist on my channel. Peace out. Wait a second. Someone's at my door. It's really late for someone to be at my door. Definitely a weird hour for an Amazon package. I don't even remember ordering anything. Oh, this box has so much weird stuff in it. What is this? This thing looks dumb. How silly. I'm fucking hungry. I got in this fridge.